It's really wonderful to be here and to share what I've been doing and really what I hope to be doing in the future as well. So I wanted to share some findings from my PhD, which I recently submitted to Hebrew University on social anthropology. And my research is really a bridge between anthropology of religion and anthropology of reproduction, which don't usually really come into a deep discussion. When I started my research, I would tell people that I'm writing about contraceptive use in the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. And the remark that I would most usually get was, "You're going to write the shortest dissertation in the world." And the answer will just be no. So I say that just to give you kind of a feeling of what people think about contraception in the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. Very high fertility rates that average on 7 but can well be 10 or 11 make people assume that ultra-Orthodox women are not using birth control at all. And I myself was quite, I shared that idea, but my MA fieldwork I was doing in Beis Yaakov, I was working on modesty practices of teenagers. And as they reached marriage, I started hearing this hushed critique about contraception and about family planning, and all of these questions kind of started to come up, and I decided that would be the perfect project to kind of pursue in terms of my PhD. So I won't be able to share all of the findings about the difficulties and the struggles, but I do want to focus on a particular issue regarding religious authority. So I wanted to start with a short story. So I visit Rachel, a well-respected Beis Yaakov seminary teacher, at her home on the outskirts of Jerusalem. As I knock on the door, I can see various faded stickers on it. One still in good condition says, "In this house we guard our tongues." I walk into the house. Rachel is praying and signals to wait until she finishes. I look for a place to sit. I move the laundry aside and look at the library right in front of me. Rachel comes back into the room. "Is it okay that we cook while we talk?" We enter the kitchen and start chopping vegetables. She tells me how her dreams were fulfilled when she married a Torah scholar. It all happened so quickly. I remember those years as a blur, she starts. I got pregnant immediately, child after child, boy after boy. Finally, I had a girl. I was so happy. Now I have someone to help me, she says, smiling. We move on with the story. Pregnancies are very hard for her each time. She stops. I'm sure she's about to tell me how she decided enough is enough, but she surprises me. I'm debating if I should have another one. At age 41, 11 children. I was sure she was done. But she goes on. It's so hard. I have been teaching at the seminary and also offering individual classes to other women. I struggle to maintain a household, care for the kids, and also teach. I am not sure. Who am I supposed to contribute to? My family or my students? I am not sure. I think I will go and see my rabbi soon. Soon, I ask her. I need him to decide for me. She grins at me and adds, but I will decide when to ask him. You see, I have to be ready to accept his opinion. So I love this story for many different reasons, but first of all, it gives you this feeling of the uncertainty. You have a woman who has already had 11 children. She's 41. Pregnancies are not the easiest thing for her, but she's uncertain what she should do. And she's conflicted by different ideals of giving to her family, giving to the community, being a teacher. And I really found that most couples that I interviewed were really stuck in this uncertainty. And it was really brilliant to see how this uncertainty really affected a lot of the things that they were doing. It affected the reproductive decision-making that they made in terms of the way they managed their reproductive decision-making, in terms of the contraception they decided to choose, and also the way in which they engage with religious authority. But before I explain religious authority, I want to give just another glimpse to understand about this really, I think, complex situation of uncertainty. So one of the people that I interviewed shared similar struggles about not being sure what to do, but at some point, I think this was after 3 children, she really decided that she wanted a break. And she told me that she wasn't sure and she didn't know what to do, and the pill didn't work for her because it was just, she didn't want to use hormones and she didn't want to use an IUD. But finally, she found the perfect contraception. What was the perfect contraception? A diaphragm. And I said to her, why is that the perfect one? And she said, well, because I really feel like I need a break now. But the diaphragm is only 97%. And I said, and what is perfect about that exactly? And she said, because I feel like I need a break. But if there is an unborn soul that really wants to come into this world, I want to make sure that I am leaving space. Perfect, as I said. So perfect, of course, has a cultural connotation, but when you are uncertain and you're not completely sure in your discussion and you're not sure what to do, so this kind of mode that I call flexible reproductive decision making is one in which a person has some sort of thought in which direction they want to go, but they leave space for other people to take a part in this decision. So the souls of unborn children are one, but the rabbi is another one. And I would really like to focus on that one, even though I'm really happy to speak about unborn souls. So I want to just say quickly that this is, I'm going to let go of the methodology, but you can ask me about that later, is that my way about thinking about religious authority is very much inspired by the late work of Michel Foucault and the emergence of the ethical turn, which has led recent scholars to rethink religious authority. I'm quoting here Hussein Ali Agrama from Chicago and Morgan Clark from Oxford. And just to give an example, Hussein Ali Agrama has a beautiful text called The Anthropology of the Fatwa, which I find really inspiring. And what he does is he uses the fatwa to problematize some of the basic assumptions constituting the imagined binary opposition between authority and ethical agency. So according to this critique, tradition or authority have been largely perceived as an obstacle to ethical self-formation, as a disposition toward or susceptibility to authority is usually considered to be the complete opposite to true agency. So Hussein Ali Agrama and Morgan Clark have kind of revisited this idea of rethinking about religious authority. And I'm trying to use this model, which actually comes from a Muslim context of fatwa seeking, to try to use it to explain the Jewish thing that I was looking at. So what I really was interested was trying to understand how during a time of uncertainty, people take such weighty decisions and really give them to other people to help them make decisions. So the task that I was set out to explore, to use Tanya Luhrmann as inspiration, was how sensible and reasonable people who live in more or less the same evidential world as the skeptic learn how to engage in practices that skeptical scholars would usually call problematic. So we have this idea of people who are very uncertain about what to do, and they go and they ask the rabbi. And using Agrama, what I really found is that people really were looking for a proper place to think about the proper Jewish decision to make. And part of making this decision was going to a rabbi and consulting with him. And during this time of uncertainty, it really was a special space to speak about things that are taboo. It was a safe and kosher space to broach a topic that they usually weren't so customary to speak about. And one of the interesting things that I found in terms of this special practice is that it differed for men and for women. So whereas the men, and I don't have time to bring you guys the quotes for this, but men seemed to really, really engage in this thing full-heartedly, and it was a very powerful place for them. However, women who had less knowledge in rabbinic law had a little bit less of space to figure this out. But interestingly, there has been a new profession called Jewish law consultants, which are female Jewish scholars who have started to act as directors. And what they do is that couples come to them and they kind of have a rehearsal before going to the rabbi. And these women show them how to make the right performance. So just to give you guys an example of this. So this is what one of the Jewish consultants explained to me. She says, I listen like a psychologist. What is really bothering you? Do you lack the confidence in yourself, or is there really a lack of communication in the marriage? After that, I encourage them to go together to a rabbi. You know, I could tell you if this is an issue of marital dispute, you will get permission for 6 months, possibly 12. If you feel like your body can't handle it, you can go to Rabbi Zalman. But I'd rather you go together and ask a halachic authority, and we will continue to be their authority for the rest of your life. And what is interesting about these women is that they have a deep knowledge of rabbinic authority and of textual knowledge, but they only have partial authority. So what they do is that they direct couples to what I call a rabbi of one's own, which I find a really interesting thing. I am very interested in this idea of thinking about religious authority, not in terms of a dichotomy between an either or all, but models of partial authority and models of legitimacy. And I hope to work on a project here, one of the two, is really looking also from a comparative perspective in the way gender and religious authority intersect both in Judaism and in Islam. I will stop here. I'm not sure if I have enough time for 6 seconds. Yes! I made it without the ring.
Yes.
Good. So
Thank